third and final panelist, Fatema Sumar, who is with Oxfam. It's all yours, the floor is yours.
So I'm here on the 3M panel. Very excited to be here, Mom. Thank you so much to Columbia University, to Yale University, and the Global Justice Conference. It's such a pleasure to be with Mohammed and Mark here. Thank you so much. I took down a lot of your buzzwords also, actually, because I am going to take some of them back, and I'm going to think about how we can also think about the virus and think about some of these other places as well. So let me see if I can marry some of the points that Mark made and talk a little bit about how we see inequality in the work. But I want to tell you, before I get to the official Oxfam piece and what we're doing, I want to just tell you how I got here, because it's I think, part of this journey we're all on. So before I joined Oxfam, it's my first time in an INGO. I worked for most of my career in the US government. So I'm a former diplomat and development official, and I worked both in the executive and legislative branches in the Senate, and then running some of our larger US government development projects at the Millennium Challenge Corporation and the State Department. And I'm saying that because I ran, in my last job, $4 billion worth of US government foreign assistance and foreign aid. And in all of those conversations and the oversight I did, I don't think I ever used, heard, or spoke the word inequality once. It was just not part of our mandate, mission, nor analysis or research. I left 18 months ago, so this is not like a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure it's still not happening today. So I say that because the journey we're on is, in many ways, a new journey. And it's not really an obvious one for a lot of critical stakeholders, especially some of the largest government donors and those with a lot of the political power that run our international aid system. So wherever you intersect with it, whether you're coming in as an NGO, as an academic, as a business, the frame of inequality is not mainstream. Right? We're just starting out in many ways. That's a personal perspective, but it's one that for me is stark because I literally left the world behind where we never thought or talked about it in the ways that we are starting to now engage in that. And the reason I'm saying that is because we didn't put money towards that. So we use very, very standard indicators of poverty as defined by the World Bank. So if you were a lower income country, lower middle income country, then you would qualify for US government assistance along these criteria. Or if you were a national security or conflict country, even if you were more like a Jordan and had more money as a unit, as an upper middle income country, then you would qualify for assistance. But if you were a country like Peru or others with really high rates of inequality, you probably were not getting much US government assistance because you just weren't poor enough to qualify. And so those indicators and the starting point of the conversation around what defines poverty is a really big deal. Because our entire age structure is based on those definitions. So I wanted to frame that because the journey I think we're collectively on over the next 10 years, and as we think about the journey to the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, is, and Mohammed, you started with this, so I'm going to come back to this, is the relationship between inequality and poverty. And I'm going to posit here today, and the journey Oxfam America and Oxfam as a confederation is on, is that inequality today is actually one of the main drivers of poverty. And we will never tackle the injustice of poverty and end the injustice of poverty if we don't actually focus on through a lens of inequality. So that is a really fundamentally different kind of statement than you would have heard 10 years ago. I would posit from broader INGO culture and space. Now, the data, and I know you spent a lot of this morning talking about this, but the data is pretty stark. So we're known, Oxfam America is part of a confederation. We're one of 20 affiliates that make up the Oxfam Confederation. We work in over 90 countries to end the injustice of poverty. We've been in the space for many, many years. We are one of the largest INGOs in the space. But we also know that even while we have made really terrific gains in ending extreme poverty, the rates of poverty are increasing when you look at the aggregate and not just World Bank levels and definitions of those who are under 190 a day. But if you look above 190 and above, and what it takes not just to survive, but to thrive, those rates are increasing. They're also not just about countries overseas, and what I say is it's not just about brown and black countries overseas, which has really been the traditional development model, where you have largely white Western countries who then go into brown and black countries to try to solve poverty. The model no longer exists. That is no longer the model anymore. We're talking about global poverty, we're talking about global inequality, and it's happening right here in Connecticut, it's happening right here in the United States, and it's all over the world, including the richest countries in the world. So the model is different. It's not this model of yesteryear, even though much of our infrastructure of the INGO community was created in yesteryear. So we have to adapt. We have to adapt if we're going to be relevant, and we have to be different. So let me start with just a quick frame of where we are in the world today. 2017 and 2018 numbers. The fortune of billionaires, and we're known a lot for the research. Oxfam is one of the ones driving a lot of this research at Davos and a lot of these other spaces. So billionaires, we're obsessed with billionaires. We think there's too many of them. There are too many of them. We don't really need probably any, if not all of them, that are created every day. 2017, 2018, how many dollars a day? A day do billionaires increase their fortune? Anyone want to take a guess? Throw out a number. Because my income doesn't go up that much every day, I'll tell you that. I know that. I did that about myself. Billionaires, according to that data, can go up $2.5 billion a day. There you go. That's how exponential that problem is. Right? We get a COLA adjustment, many of us, and we're like super excited, right? For that extra 1.5% that comes through our paycheck, we're like, this is very exciting, right? So think about it. $2.5 billion a day as of 2017, 2018 is what billionaires in the world can make extra. And then think about the fortunes of 3.5 billion people who make up the poorest half of humanity, who are collectively seeing their wealth decline, right? So I really like what both of you said, which is, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, put them in mine, which is, we don't have a sustainable solution yet, collectively, to fight poverty. We don't. Because that statistic suggests that your number of the 150 million versus 150 billion, and your word of failure, I think, is humbling to us if you flip the cube a little bit to say, we don't have a solution that's sustainable at scale yet to fight the injustice of poverty, because we have not yet tackled inequality and how inequality is driving global poverty. Now, the other frame that's different is that we used to think very traditionally, and I love how you talked about, Mohammed, the 5 segments of the poor and this hated poor. Very powerful. It used to be that we thought about poverty as, people in certain communities, in certain places that looked a certain way or lived in certain places, etc., right? In boxes. And we all had them in our own communities, in our own countries in certain ways. That's no longer true either, right? You could be living up in the Boston area where I live, and let me tell you, just to buy a house for most people is unaffordable. I'm sure you have some of that in San Francisco.
Just a little.
Right? So it's no longer an export problem far away. It's right here at home in all of our communities. So that's the situation. Let me give 3 thesis statements that I would put for us to think about. First, inequality today is unacceptably high. That is to say that 26 people today, 26 people out of 7.7 billion people, 26 people own as much as humankind. Half of humankind, half of humankind. 26 people. So, that's unacceptable. I say that because politically we have to socialize that's unacceptable. We kind of know it intrinsically, that makes sense. But our political systems actually don't talk about it like that. We don't elect candidates for that. We don't pass laws because of that. We don't have a tax code that says that's unacceptable. We have a tax code that is trying to create that and create more billionaires to reward a race to the top. Right? Second, inequality is not inevitable. We're not destined and doomed to keep living this way. We make choices every single day in the politicians we elect, in the laws that we pass, in the products we buy on the supermarket shelves, as consumers. We make choices every single day in the kind of world we want to live in. So right now, that's the system we're supporting. And we make political choices and social and economic choices to support those systems. But it's not inequitable. The third is that we're not going to fix this unless we actually start tackling economic and gender inequality at the same time. Gender cannot be part of the intervention. Gender cannot be an extra thing we think about. Every single intervention must be linked with gender if this is going to work. Now, intrinsically this makes sense, but in fact, most of the work we do, that does not actually happen. And it's not funded like that. It's seen as a good thing to do, not essential or absolute in order to get to solution. So I want to talk about two specific angles really quickly about inequality. I want to talk about the global aid system and the global humanitarian system. So first, on the global aid system. Development aid can be a really powerful tool in this inequality fight. We have to restructure it that way, though. It is not on that course, and I gave the example of where I came from in my own career. It's not on that course in the US government, in OECD countries and OECD major donors, and then other donors as well in the space. So there really is a real question on the table starting at that space. The second is, we should not fool ourselves. Our current aid system can also deepen inequality. So aid alone is not a solution if we just throw aid money at inequality. In fact, the way we do aid deepens inequality in some cases. And we have to own that, accept that, and have honest conversations in those spaces. Donors can also risk increasing inequality in the way that they do work. Right? Again, not obvious that you're going to be just tackling poverty and not exacerbating inequality in the ways that you're doing your work. So those are issues that Oxfam is really taking on, not just as we think about our work in over 90 countries at the program level or at the community level, but in the global aid architecture around global aid effectiveness. And those are the conversations we're bringing every day in Washington and Brussels and New York and in all these spaces to change the aid architecture and the aid effectiveness. Because in some ways, we're having a new conversation with the old institutions and the old ways of doing business. Right? So it's time for a change, but we're not all yet there. Let me talk a little about the humanitarian system. So the humanitarian system, we are at a point today where we have the largest number of people on the move in human history. Right? Now, I can give you the statistics. It's something, over 70 million people today are displaced as a result largely of conflict. It's going up. It's going to keep going up with climate driving a lot of this. And it's going to keep going up with political choices some countries are making to keep people in certain places. But the point being that our humanitarian system is busting at the seams right now to accommodate the largest number of people on the move in human history. Those are for people that can afford to escape and leave their countries. Many more are trapped within. And a lot of the numbers don't capture that or give voice to those who are not able to leave that system. Inequality in the global humanitarian space is really stark. And it's not an issue we're talking enough about. So one of the things Oxfam is trying to do is really try to transform the entire humanitarian aid system. And we're talking about a brand new model of humanitarian aid that many others are also talking about. We're not alone, we're not the only ones, and we did not invent it. But we're talking about why it's so important, and it's called local humanitarian leadership. And it's really simple. The concept's so simple that you're going to be nodding and saying, of course, which is, think about your home community. A disaster strikes tomorrow, an earthquake, a tsunami, floods, pick your conflict of choice, and you're trapped, your floodwaters, whatever the issue is, who's the first person helping you in that situation? Is it an international government and system thousands and thousands of miles away that's going to take weeks to mobilize, run assessments, get the stocks and warehouses and supplies over by boat or plane over? Or is it your local church or school or women's group or co-op down the street as you're WhatsApping each other and letting you know, I've got 3 people trapped in this basement or in this attic? It's the local community. It's ourselves, actually. We're going to take action to mobilize. This makes a lot of sense to us, right? Nodding? Not nodding? Do I need to convince anybody? Raise your hand. Okay. So, local leaders, local communities on the front lines of humanitarian disaster. You don't have to be a humanitarian NGO for that, right? We need to be switching to do resilience with local communities, disaster preparedness, especially for those on the front lines of recurring natural disasters and conflict or climate, and funding those spaces. But more importantly, we actually have to move to a funding model that actually puts funding to those communities in real time. So we're in 2019, almost in 2020. How much of international funding that is raised for appeals for humanitarian disasters goes to local communities? Anyone want to wager? I guess? 10%. 10%? So, and we all agreed, let me give you some context to my question, because we agreed in 2016, the international community, including the world's largest governments and NGOs, so those involved in this conversation, to do better and to start moving funding into that space away from major international players to local communities. We made that commitment in 2016. We came up with benchmarks and targets. We missed them all, but we came up with them. Anyone want to guess the number? Like 10%? 1%? A lot of optimism here, I can feel it. 10? Mark? 0.1.
5.
So 96% of funding still goes to international large actors. So that means if you're in Syria, and we know that we're working with one NGO in Syria, they get the contracts to do 75% of program implementation in a certain area and region, right? They're the ones doing 75% of the work. They're getting 1% of funding right now from the international system to do that, because it's going to large-scale international actors who really take up the cost of that transaction, and most of the money stays with them. Right?
Where it's easier to administer.
Well, there's administration, there's contracts, there's procurement, there's complex systems behind that. But we get lost within the complexity of that, and the principles that feel so easy and seem so obvious don't actually show up in the ways that we do business. So we perpetuate inequality in how we think about these systems, and how we think about who gets to make the decisions at the local level about not just how much, but how money should be used, where it should be distributed, for what purposes, because that power is not actually sitting with local community leaders and local women who really know, because they know their communities better than anybody else. We all kind of know that. And they're completely left without the power to do that. So I will end there, because I just want to come back to where I started, which is as we talk about poverty, which is a mission statement. So Mark, you gave great statistics about how many internet groups. I think there's, in the US alone, there's like tens of thousands of NGOs in different ways set up to tackle some version of poverty, right? And then you talk about, I don't know if you know how many there are in the world. I'm sure there's millions and millions, right? We add them all up. There's so many of us that care and talk about poverty. But switching that frame from poverty to inequality as a major driver is a journey, and we're not all there yet. And as we think about that, it requires rewriting in many ways of the rules. And it really underscores that poverty is not about scarcity. Poverty is about power and money. And if we're willing to have that conversation, which can be a little bit tough and a little bit more politically sensitive, it changes the entire options of what we could actually do and what solutions we could generate, whether that's with public and private or whoever the different kinds of stakeholders be. So anything else?
Thank you.